So, hello, everyone. We're about to start our webinar. Welcome. It's nice that you find your way to us on a Saturday evening. My name is Katerina Anastasiou, and I'm the facilitator for Migration and Global Strategy for Transform Europe, the foundation of the European Left Party. Today, we have the honor to host for a discussion Aida Touma Suleiman, a member of the Knesset, a member of the Politburo of Hadash, and also former chair of the Women's Rights Committee in Israel. Aida Touma Suleiman is a Palestinian Knesset member, as I said. She is one of the most prominent feminist politicians and activists in Palestinian and Israeli society. She has chaired the Committee for the Promotion of Women's Rights and Gender Equality and actively campaigned for the establishment of a state commission of inquiry to combat violence against women and feminicides. Aida is also the founder of Women's Against Violence. The association was the first to open shelters and a call center for Arab victims of sexual assault. Before I pass, we start the webinar and I pass the microphone to Aida, I would like to say a couple of words about today's webinar organization. We organized this together with Vienna-based collective called OneState Embassy. Me personally, I have had the honor and the luck to work with them for many, many years. And I'm very happy that we managed to pull off this webinar together. And I would like to pass the floor shortly to Inbal Volpo, one of the people organized in OneState Embassy, to explain a little bit more about their collective and the work they do.
Hi, thank you, Kat. So as Kat said, my name is Inbal Volpo. I'm an Israeli living in Vienna for the past almost 5 years. I've joined Osama Zatar's project that is called OneState Embassy Art Collective, which is a political art collective that actively works on bringing the discussion about the occupation in Palestine to the European platform. We have been doing it through our language, which is art, in various events. In the beginning of this war, we initiated an action that is called Standing Together Vienna. And this action actually grew to a movement of 60 members, volunteers that work together for the past 5 months for coexistence, for the alliance of Jews and Arabs, for peace, justice, end of the war, ceasefire, immediate release of the hostages. We are extremely happy to have this discussion today. This will be one of the actions that we took for Women's Day. And we are extremely proud of hosting you today, Aida. So thank you so much. I will share some information about us, both OneState Embassy, Art Collective, and Standing Together Vienna on our chat. But now I will clear the floor. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Imba. Thank you. Thank you also for being so sufficient with the time, and thank you for being here today and all the help. So, Aida, again, a warm hello and thank you to you for being here. And if you agree, I would go ahead and ask you the first question. Yeah. So since this webinar is organized within the frame of the, I wouldn't say celebration, but commemoration of Women's Day around the world, I would like to start our discussion by hearing in your experience, a little bit your insight on the current status of womanhood in Israel, and elaborate a little bit on the major struggles faced by women from all communities. Additionally, we would really like to know what are the distinct challenges that women encounter nowadays there. Thank you and welcome again.
Thank you, Katerina. Of course, let me first of all thank you for hosting me in this webinar. I'm really grateful for that. We need all the platforms where we can bring our voices, not only as women, but in general, peace activists and anti-occupation activists in Israel. if we are Palestinians or Jewish Israelis, citizens of the state. It's very important that you also are focusing today on the situation of women. As you mentioned, this is not a celebration day. I always used to say it's a struggle day for women, and it is a day where we can focus the light on what are the women facing, either locally or in general in the world. And of course, we are facing now a horrible war. There is no way to celebrate anything while all this killing and all of this destruction is happening around us. And we've been going through that in the last 5 months, so that the life before this war seems to be very far. And you can barely sometimes remember that we used to have a life before this war, and we used to have struggles that we were focusing on. Although the struggle against occupation, continuous occupation against colonization of Palestine and the implications of that on the Israeli society has been always on our agenda as women. We always saw that there is an interrelation between our status as women and the situation of military actions and military perceptions that we are living in. There is no way to decide suddenly that we are not interested in occupation and we are focusing now on status of women, because it is all connected. Before today, of course, we are in the Israeli society. Suddenly, after the Hamas attack on the 7th of October, there was created a new discourse that is focusing, and I think it's very much legitimized to focus on the fact that women were killed on the 7th of October, Israeli Jewish women, and an Arab woman, a Palestinian Arab Bedouin woman, was killed also on the attacks of the 7th of October by the attacks by Hamas, and women were kidnapped, became hostages, and still are hostages in Gaza till today. So a lot, there were also reports coming out about sexual abuse that happened on the 7th of October. A lot of the discourse that was going on lately in the last 5 months has been concentrating on that. Although there are also changes that are happening for me as a feminist and as an activist, a peace activist, is worrying me. And I believe that when the war is over, we will be left with a new reality in concerning women's rights. We have to remind ourselves that on the 6th of October, Israeli society was still struggling against the judicial overhaul that had also implications on the status of women and on the issues related to women. If it is by only giving so much power to the very right-wing Messiah powers in the government in Israel, and trying to release themselves from any judicial criticism or any judicial power in order to continue with their programs and agenda related to the occupation, but also related to oppressing human rights and women's rights inside Israel because of the right-wing agenda. You have to understand that the right wing in Israel is becoming more and more extreme. And sometimes we have the feeling in the last 5 months that even those who in the past declared themselves to be center or to the left powers are has allied very clearly under this war claims into a very, let's say, worrying ideas. We see that there is a very high rate in the militarization of the society. If it is by the fact that more than 80,000 pieces of guns and guns were distributed to civilians, beside or on top of all the weapons that are in the hands of the reserves and all the army, which means also that women are joining this militarization actions of obtaining guns and moving in the public sphere with these guns. You have to understand that we all understand as feminists that a society that have so much high percentage of weapons distributed in the hands of civilians in the public sphere means more violence against women, means more femicide of women. We have also to understand that there are more and more increasement of racist discourses and very religious discourses that are becoming, of course, the parties that represent the right wing and the racist parties and the religious parties are sitting in the government, and they are using the legitimate fear that the Israeli society is feeling in order to escalate more and more and to promote their agenda. We will see, in my opinion, a backlash. Although on one hand, they are talking about abuses of women, but they are talking in a very nationalist, patriarchal way, not in a way that is bringing the issue to be discussed and how wars and occupation bring with them such kind of abuses, but talking about women as if, it reminds me very much when they are talking about the national honor that was abused in the 7th of October. It reminds me very much in the patriarchal way of looking at women as objects that are serving the national causes. I'm afraid that after this war, there will be, hopefully it will end very soon, we will be facing a backlash in the whole discourse about women's rights, and we will see that the right wing is very much has got more power. On the other hand, we have to remind ourselves that there are different communities inside Israel. Part of them are the Palestinian women, citizens of Israel, who has been deprived and discriminated against in the past, but it escalated under this war. Although we paid also a price in 7th of October by 20 Arab citizens, including women and children, were killed in that attack. And we are again persecuted, and there is a very high oppression level of not allowing us to express our feelings when we are seeing the horrible massacres that are happening to our own people in Gaza. Of course, the Arab Bedouin women also are facing different kinds of reality, as they are in the south, living in the so-called unrecognized villages that the state do not recognize them for more than 75 years already, deprived of the basic rights, including the right of security of having shelters in their villages and towns, and nobody wants to speak about that. Women are facing high racism, especially when they are encountering, public services like hospitals or work, because of our being Palestinians and being Muslims. And there are more and more cases of racism, of dismissing from work, dismissing from universities, and being harassed because of how they look or how they are dressed or how they or because they are speaking Arabic. This is in general. Of course, all the issues that were before the 6th of October, violence, femicide is still going on, and we are facing that. Just yesterday night, a woman was killed. Number of women who are killed is very high, and we have to take into consideration, by even looking at the state budget, that those who are talking to the world about how they are very furious about the situation of women and what happened on the 7th of October are the same government, or are the same decision makers who deprived women and issues related to women of budget in this budget. So the war is also taking all the attention, and we know when the nationalists approach and agenda is very high on top priority, women are usually pushed down in the agenda.
Thank you very much, Aida. This was already more than I hoped for. Thank you very much for the insights. Let me take the question a little bit further. What about the challenges that the women in Gaza and the West Bank face right now, particularly inside the situation of war? And I mean, is there any hope or help for them? Do you see the international institutions taking these realities into consideration? Is anything happening for their protection? I mean, looking at the pictures of Gaza, I assume my question is superficial, but I would like to hear how you see it, and what are the challenges also ahead.
No, I think it's not superficial. Actually, Katrina, it's very important to remind ourselves always of those photos and those videos which are coming from Gaza, as painful as they are, but we need not to close our eyes or to protect ourselves from the pain and say these are horrible situations and that's enough. What is happening in Gaza is way beyond even ethnic cleansing, and in the West Bank, it's more clear the ethnic cleansing may be, but in the war in Gaza, women are back into square one, where they are starting to struggle not for women's rights. They are struggling for survival. A real survival, to stay alive and to try to protect their children and to try to provide their children with milk and food. And I think it's, and water, clean water. I think the situation in Gaza is way beyond what we even thought about. It is a test for our humanity and for the world's humanity in general, because what the women in Gaza are going through, if we remember that around 11,000 women, if not more, were killed in that war. More than 12,000 children were killed in that war. So you can imagine that the women, first of all, the women who were killed and the girls who were killed, the women who were killed, they had children, and the children are raised now. We see stories of children who 5 years old is taking care of his 2 years old brother because his mom is killed and his father is killed. The woman has to go through the fact to become refugees in one day, running away from bombings and from destruction, and has to stay either in the streets with their children or in very bad, not tents, even plastic bags, who became tents, without sanitary infrastructure, without water. I don't want to think about myself, even knowing that that my son or daughter is hungry and I'm not able to provide them with anything to eat. You have also to take into consideration that Gazan women are going through abortion because they are moving from one area to another under bombings, and they are losing children, and they have to continue. After having an abortion, they have to continue. They don't have medical treatment. It's not, I cannot imagine anybody who can speak about women's rights in these conditions. The basic human right of health, of a place to stay in, a home, or to protect your own family, has been taken from them. There are horrible stories that we keep hearing, and I know that there are women also who are kidnapped from Gaza to Israel, put in prison, in order to be a kind of reserve for any agreement of exchange of prisoners. And there was a woman who got into prison, Gazan woman who was taken from Gaza into a prison in Israel. She was 82 years old. A woman of 82 years old, how much threat she can be to the security of the Israeli citizens. In the West Bank, if we just remember that more than 20 Bedouin localities were kicked out of their land and became refugees. They were going through ethnic cleansing. Those 20 localities have women in them. Those women in one day lost their homes, lost their way of living, and have to adjust with the family and take care of the family while they are relocated because of ethnic cleansing perpetrated by the settlers under the protection of the army, Israeli army. There are also a lot of women who are every day, we cannot continue to count how many, because every night, every day, there are more women and men who are arrested and put in jail. And in my opinion, this is not an arrest, this is not a legal process. This is again kidnapping. When you take someone from his bed at night, throw him in jail, not going through a real trial, and give him administrative detention, this is also a kind of kidnapping people, this time done by the state.
Thank you, Aida. I really cannot fathom how you manage to speak even. Yes, it's you describe a situation that is harrowing all of us, but I cannot imagine what it is to live there and live also in Israel in this particular moment. I mean, you yourself, you are a politician and you're a woman. Being myself also a woman in politics, I know this is never easy, but you're also a Palestinian woman politician in Israel. And I think also our audience will be interested in to know what this actually means, how these two identities interact with your political activity, let's say. And maybe after this question, we would change the entity and go a little bit more in depth. I will ask you a couple of things about Hadash, but I think this question would be now also important to put things in context.
Well, it never has been easy to be a Palestinian politician in Israel. Of course, all of those difficulties are nothing to be compared with the situation now. You have to understand, I was serving as the chairwoman of the Committee on Status of Women, General Committee, meaning for all the women in Israel for 7 years. And I really served all the women in Israel without discriminating, because I wanted to give an example how we can be real feminists in politics and to bring the values that I believe in. All of that just disappeared when I did not agree to confirm with the mainstream of supporting this war. And I became, like my colleagues, who we are the only voices against this war in the Israeli Knesset. You have to understand, the Israeli Knesset today, there are 110 people who are supporting the war, and 10 people who are me, my colleagues, and another Arab faction who are against this war. And we are the most vocal, our 5 members. We are the most vocal about it, and we say that from day one. Of course, there was a huge attack on us. I was suspended 2 months from attending any of the meetings in the Knesset because I tweeted testimonies from a Shifa hospital. There was a report in the international media, and I quoted some of the testimonies, tweeted them, and in 24 hours, there were 2,503 complaints against me in the ethics committee. And the ethics committee suspended me for 2 months. Of course, immediately, in 24 hours, I became the most vicious enemy of the public in Israel. My colleague, Ofer Kassif, Comrade Ofer Kassif, also went through, he was suspended for 1.5 months, and then they started a process of impeachment against him. For the first time in the history of the country, they start this. And they wanted to impeach him because he thought he signed a petition that is supporting the petition of South Africa in the ICJ. All of that is accompanied with a lot of threats. Whenever we are speaking, giving our speeches, of course, there's a lot of incitement against us and screaming at us because we are against the war. But this is part of what our community is going through and our constituency is going through. In 5 months, more than 450 people were interrogated or arrested under the accusation of supporting Hamas. And that's because they tweeted or posted a version of the Quran sometimes. Celebrities and singers and artists were arrested and persecuted because they are against the war. We were denied the right of protesting and demonstrating against the war up till last month. The police is not allowing us to demonstrate, and they say it very clearly. They threat people who want to give us permissions to have our meetings against the war. and it's very clear fascism that is going on under the cover of the war and securing the Israeli society. We insist that whoever is leading this war is endangering the safety and the security, not only of the Palestinian people, but also of the Israeli people.
Thank you very much, Aida. This was really, really, really clear. I think it was also very important to listen to you because a very frequent argumentation, particularly in the German-speaking countries in Europe for supporting Israel, is that it's the last democracy of the Middle East. So I think you put the things in order with
Democracy
your...
for whom?
Yeah, exactly. That's the question. Democracy for whom? I would now maybe jump the topic nonetheless, and jump or not jump, bridge the topic, I would say, and ask you a couple of questions about Hadash. I mean, it's clear also by what you already said in the previous answer that Hadash has a clear opposition to war. Let's try. I mean, I know it's difficult, but let's try to think a little bit about the next day. Hadash is still advocating, for example, for a two-state solution, and at the same time, it's the only party in Israel that has both Arab and Jewish representatives, but also voters. I see there was a question already posted in the Q&A box that is relevant to mine now, asking how do you deal with the fact that being part of the politics in Israel per se within the Palestinian community is really criticized, and why you think having this position, Hadash existing in Israel and so on, is important?
The question was, I think they are asking about normalization.
Yes, they're asking about normalization, yes. They're saying, I mean, I can read it out loud. It's Yusuf Hassan saying, as a Palestinian citizen of Israel, how do you deal with the rejection of some Arabs and the prejudice of normalization or accusations of worsening the occupation by living there? I see Arab and Jewish Israelis who fiercely fight the occupation, although they're hated from some Palestinians and allies, particularly in their Arab countries. It's longer, the question, but it's more or less the spirit of the question.
First of all, I think that I did not choose to immigrate to Israel so that I will be accused of normalization of that occupation. The state has immigrated to me, to us. We are living in our homeland, and the state of Israel was established 75 years ago. Our community was the community that remained in its homeland after Nakba. After Nakba, we were 150,000. Today, we are 1,500,000 in our own homeland. So staying in the homeland and struggling in order to build up our community and to be strong enough to face and to struggle against the occupation, I think this is something that we owe to our heroic parents, fathers, and mothers who survived the Nakba and insisted to stay. Otherwise, I think that the major plan of the Zionism at that point was actually to do an ethnic cleansing. And I still remember that Ben-Gurion said that it was a mistake that that some of us remained inside the borders of Israel. So this is on one hand. We are, I do not see myself as part of the system when I'm in the Knesset. I'm in the Knesset in order to bring the voices of our constituency and the voices of the Jewish democratic forces who are against occupation. So this is in that meaning. The other question was if we are still, or why we are still calling for the two-state solution. I think it was very clear up till the 6th of October that the Palestinian issue was totally marginalized, and almost nobody mentioned that. Of course, some says that it happened because the war on Ukraine has just became on the top agenda of the world. But we know that there was a process going on to marginalize the Palestinian situation, and that different Israeli right-wing government had worked very hard in order to create what is called the state of the greater Israel land, which means Israel controlling the whole Palestinian historical land. And we understand that after, if there is something that has changed after the 7th of October, is that there are more and more powers in the world who are talking about creating a Palestinian state. And I think that my own people, after all of that suffering, deserve to get the right of self-determination and to be liberated from occupation. Now, we are saying after, and we understand that many of those who are talking about the two-state solution, including the United States of America, are more paying a lip service, and they are not so much, they do not speak about the state that we would like to see. A sovereign state, a full right of self-determination for the Palestinians. But still, we think now there is a window of opportunity to go through demanding, recognizing the Palestinian state. When we are talking, I don't like very much to speak about the two-state solution, because actually there is a state, a one state existing now. And those who are deprived the right of creating their own state are the Palestinian people. So I would like to say that the demand now should be recognizing the Palestinian state. At least there is a legal entity that is supposed to be in the international community, a legal entity to be recognized with the full rights of a state to start, and to declare the occupation, Israeli occupation in the West Bank and in Gaza, as an occupation of a different state. Israel is invading another state. It's not an occupation over people. So now, why if many people ask me why you are not for the one-state solution, I'm coming from a communist party, and my communist comrades, before the partition decision made by the United Nations, there was a delegation who came to Palestine to try to figure out what kind of solution they should. And my comrades, and I still believe, they said it very clearly, the best solution will be a one state over the whole land for the Jews and the Arabs who are living on the land right now, and to have it as a one state democratic state. That will be the best. And I'm telling you, if you can guarantee me a one state solution that will be democratic for everybody, believe me, I wouldn't reject it today. But let's be realistic. Why I'm saying let's be realistic? Because first of all, the Palestinians have the right of self-determination, and they are the only ones who should decide how to interpret, how to implement their right of self-determination. And until now, they are demanding a state beside. Second, 75 years, Israel was selling to the world the idea of the only democracy. And we, the Palestinian citizens of Israel, till today are deprived of equality, deprived of democracy. So what hasn't been reached in 75 years, I don't see how it's going to be, especially if we are looking at the global powers that are existing today. If those global powers are not able to stop the massacres and the genocide that is happening, they will be enforcing Israel to have a one-state solution. The veto that is given by the United States of America and the Security Council will be changing in order to create a one-state solution. And last, I'm giving you another thing to think about, because you are Europeans. If anybody came to the Europeans during the Second World War, telling them that the solution for this war will be creating an entity called the EU, the European Union, and all the people will be equal in that entity, and there will be no borders, and everybody will live together happily ever after. Would they at that time will be able even to reconcile the Europeans after the Second World War and start immediately, or they went back to the national state and from there grew up into the EU? Why you want us to overcome steps and jump over steps and create a different total situation while the reality is not there anymore?
Thank you very much, Aida. Once again, to the point. Okay, I'm gonna take a question from the chat. Enriched a little bit with a question from me. I mean, Mari Palmak is asking what pressure is coming from Israel, inside Israel, she means especially women, for a ceasefire in Gaza. And I would like to add to this question, I mean, the year before, 2023, the beginning of 2023, pre-7th of October, but also the year before that, we saw a movement in Israel developing around the reform of the judiciary reform. And somehow, at least in Europe, we don't get to hear in the news about the social reactions and the opposition to this war, or we don't really understand if the anti-juridical reform movement was progressive, what happens now, what changed. So 2 questions in one. Are there still people believing in democracy and equality in Israel, and where are they? And second, what are women doing for ceasefire, or where do they become vocal within Israel?
Okay. As to the democracy movement, I have to be clear. Before when there were all the demonstrations, we were trying to push the so-called democracy movement to go deep into their opposition to the judicial overall, and to say it very clearly that there is no democracy under occupation, with the occupation. And that what they were going out to defend, it was they were defending the ethnic democracy for the Jews, because they didn't want to speak about our situation as citizens inside Israel. So 2 issues, we were marginalized and pushed away from these discussions, because democracy was meant for the Jews in Israel, not for the Palestinians under occupation, not for the Palestinians. We were supposed to live on the margins of the democracy, so-called democracy. But we understood the importance of defending what is left from that democracy. But we wanted them also to understand that what we need is not to go back to the situation that existed before the judicial overall. What we need is to build a real democracy. And if there are more and more people who are willing to go on the streets defending democracy, so let's defend democracy and not ethnic democracy. But for our regret, that was not the general atmosphere, and it was very clear now after this war, because people who are now large part of them are defending this war, are supporting this war, and think that it is a defensive war. And on the other hand, they are pushing. There are demonstrations going on in Israel, and the demonstrations are concentrating mainly on the issue of free the hostages. And of course, I think it's a legitimate demand, and I wish really that this horrible government will understand that they need to do an agreement very quickly in order to release the hostages, which they are not doing. But many of those who are now protesting under the slogan of free the hostages are willing to continue the war right after they free the hostages. They are not against the war. They want to free the hostages. Of course, some of the hostages' families and some of the, even some of those who were murdered family victims are against the war, but they are a minority and they are silenced many times. On the other hand, we are protesting and we are saying that we are against the war, but I don't want to have any illusions. We are not the majority. And that's why it's very important to continue to protest. Today, we had 2 protests. One of them is a women protest, I have to say. Jewish and Arab women who commemorated the 8th of March in Taipei, in center of the country. And we went out on a vehicle protest in a very busy highway. And but after all, we can maximum reach 1,000 people, while the other can reach, tens of thousands.
Thank you, Aida. Going to the next question, I'm going to take again a little bit of questions from the public. There is a repetition of a question I side asked before regarding particularly women institutions in the West Bank and in Gaza, and whether or not you cooperate with them, or do you know of any Israeli feminist institutions that cooperate with institutions in Gaza and in the West Bank? I guess people want to know who and how they could support also from afar. Perhaps let's do this one, and the others are a little bit more complicated, so I would take separate time for them.
Okay. Well, in Gaza, the women and in general the civil society is almost paralyzed because of the situation, especially in north of Gaza. In the south, in Rafah, there are some who are trying to help out with, distributing humanitarian aid or trying to help women, but most of the infrastructure has been destroyed. I know that there is an Israeli society, Gisha, which was responsible for many years of trying to help with freedom of movement of the Gazan people mainly, and the West Bank. And I work very closely with them in the Knesset vis-a-vis the ministries, different ministries. They are still trying to help out. Physicians for Human Rights, Israeli organization, of course, they are not allowed to enter Gaza or to get any kind of help. We want to people want here to support with the humanitarian aid physicians, and would love to go to Gaza to help out their colleagues. And I know that there is a lack of physicians, and because the experts and the best physicians are arrested, and many medical staff has been killed in this war. But we are not allowed to enter any of the humanitarian aid. In the West Bank, women organizations are trying to help. You have to understand that in the West Bank, there is almost 120,000 Palestinian workers who used to enter every day to Israel to work in the Israeli economy. And since the war, so the beginning of the war, they are not allowed. So they are unemployed, and many of them are the only supporters of their families. So poverty is climbing up. And if we are talking about food security in Gaza, very soon we will be also facing troubles in the West Bank, and many of the families are. So all the different activities of women organizations is going back to the basic needs, trying to support the families to survive this, even in the West Bank.
Thank you, Aida. I'm continuing taking questions from the public. Okay, they're using this Q&A box. So there is a question by William asking about, from what I understand, what he says is that the LGBTQI topics are more or less instrumentalized by Israel. He writes, on the one hand, Israel is claiming to liberate Palestinian women and LGBTQI by freeing them from Hamas. On the other hand, you see pictures of IDF soldiers wearing the underwear of women that would just escape their home as a joke. You can even see IDF regularly weaponizing the LGBTQI identity of Palestinians to turn them into informants against their own people, threatening to out them if they refuse. How do you explain this gap between morality, between goal and reality? I would say morality and reality, and all this from an intersectional perspective. I mean, in general, I think okay, there is the particularity of LGBTQI people, and there is the general gap between morality and reality. This moral superiority, no, we have to free Gaza from Hamas. This is quite a successful slogan in Europe as well, I have to say. And the inability to look within the Israeli society and see how militarized, racist, nationalist it has become. Aida, the floor is yours again.
Well, there is a gap between not only morality and reality, there is a gap between propaganda and reality too. Pinkwashing, it's a very well-known terminology. Israel has been leading in the last 10 years this parades of LGBT and talking and using, this is again, the white supremacy of feeling that you are coming to rescue those who are underprivileged or persecuted in their own communities while you are bombing them. And come on. Which morality allows you to occupy other people? Which morality allows you to bomb? If they care so much for Palestinian women, how come 11,000 women are killed? Are they Hamas members? 12,000 children, are they Hamas members? sorry that I'm talking in a nervous way, but enough is enough. There is no excuse, even for the Europeans, to claim that they don't know or they do not understand the situation. When women and children are killed, there is no excuses, and don't let anybody sell you any story. This is not good to use it, bullshit about rescuing women. They are using them for the propaganda. It's like the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Israel published my photo saying, you see how democratic we are? She is the chair of the, by the fact that they are doing this, they are my English went because I'm nervous, sorry. They are admitting that they feel, that they feel superior, and they are giving me the chance. If I'm a full citizen, if you really a real democracy, it wouldn't be an issue if I am an Arab or Palestinian. And whatever is said about rescuing Palestinians, we know how Palestinian women were drugged, abused, filmed, and then asked to cooperate with the occupation army. We know about cases about the LGBT where they are used. They will get you outing, and this is how they are rescuing them. So, sorry. In these days, when the Palestinian people is going through what they are going, all these stories become ridiculous.
Thank you, Aida. I misplaced a question in the Q&A. There is somebody that is asking, how do you see, changing again the topic, how do you see I will read it out loud. In a two-state solution, Fatah, Hamas would fight each other for governance for the Palestinian state. How do you see an exit or hope out of that? Would you move to the state? Like, if there would be a Palestinian state, would you move to the state? I think you don't have to answer this question. It reminds me.
I will answer it very happily.
Okay, and then there is Mary, who made a very good question in the beginning, kind of using your argument why the one-state solution is right now not really realistic, saying, okay, but the last 50 years, the two-state solution didn't work either. So how could this be achieved now?
Okay.
Yeah.
First of all, I will not move to anywhere. I'm sitting in my home, in my homeland, and homeland for me is not the state. It's the place, it's the people, it's the family, it's my connections. And this is where I am. Exactly like many of the Jews who are in the United States of America or in Europe and did not come to Israel when Israel was created. And it wasn't an excuse not to have Israel established, because not all the Jews are going to come. So I'm in my homeland and I'm happy actually, I'm not happy, but I'm in my homeland. Anyway, as to in the last 20 years, the Palestinian issue, the Palestinian state did not work out. Would you show me where is the Palestinian state that didn't work out? The Palestinian state was never established. So anybody who is talking about the two-state solution failed, there wasn't a two-state solution. There was a process. There were negotiations. There was a kind of a NPA, National Palestinian Authority, that was more like a municipality rather than a state. but we cannot say it failed because it wasn't accomplished. And I stick into the other reasons that I used to speak about why. And I'm again telling you, if someone will guarantee for me a one state that everybody lives together and reconcile and it will be democratic and secular, I will be more than happy to accept that. I don't see it feasible. And I see it even harder. Some of those who talk about the one state solution usually argue with me and tell me, yeah, we know it's not going to happen now with this political situation, with this global power situation, but it will be a more a struggle to go on for tens of years. And usually I say, well, you can afford sitting in Europe saying it's going to be a struggle for tens of years. The Palestinians who are killed now under occupation cannot afford for them. They want a solution. And they want to be liberated of the occupation. And this is very legitimate for them. About Hamas and the fact that they might fight among each other, they might. But who put anybody in charge, the police of the world, to give someone a right, to give people a right of self-determination, guaranteeing that it's all going to be democratic going on the same? There are states who are existing now, and they have civil wars. I'm not hoping that for my own people. I want them to find a solution. I think that part of the opportunity that is existing is because everybody now understands that division among the Palestinian society had brought us into this horrible situation. And both Fatah and Hamas understand that each one by itself cannot control. And nobody can guarantee how things will develop. But also nobody can use that as an excuse to deprive the Palestinian people of their right to have their own state. So I really hope that it's going to be. I wish that everybody who is talking about the fact that there is no political agency among the Palestinians to have their own state, think about the political agency on the Israeli side, who is only saying no, no, and taking its citizens, its people, to a catastrophe one after another by insisting on occupation. So, yes, the political agency on both sides may be not the best, but this is what is existing, and we need to deal with that.
Thank you, Aida. Now the two remaining questions of the public, I left them together. One is by Comrade Inga, who is very invested in the issue, I have to say, and justice for Palestinians, who is asking, what do you think about the Western, US, European ideas on how to create the two-state solution? Perhaps you would like to take to give us your insights on that. And then there is another question above asking how to make democracy stronger inside Israel. I guess this can also only happen with your work, so that's why it's very important that you exist as well. But I would like to combine this. Perhaps we can take some time to discuss also how European politics actually affect the situation now, and what we can do in Europe in order, A, to stop the war and really push for ceasefire, B, really push for justice for Palestinians, and if so be it, the two-state solution. How can we do it? How can we help you?
Okay. As I mentioned, I don't see till this moment that the United States of America is part of the solution. I see it part of the problem. I see it partner in this war. for my regret, because whoever wants this war to stop, whoever wants really to go for a political solution, should stop bringing ammunition and military equipment to Israel, and to support and give the political backup by voting veto every time that something is brought to the Security Council. I know that there is more and more pressure, and till this moment, Biden is trying to avoid that pressure, and it might cost him his presidency in the next election. He thinks that he is able now, to mingle between, a balance between the pressure to stop the war and the pressure to continue to support Israel, but it looks like there is need for more pressure on him to understand that if they really are looking for a political solution, they have to stop the war immediately and to act on that. And I believe it or not, that if there is a political will in the United States of America, more than even Europe, they can stop this war. As to the European, it looks like there is a gap, for my regret, between what is heard from Borrell as your international secretary, you say, and the situation in the EU and the balance of power between right and left inside the European Parliament, which is, it looks very nice to speak about the two-state solution, but I do not see steps made. Still, there are big countries in the EU that big states that are still giving support to. They are becoming more critical, and they echo criticism against this war, but they have to be more clear about it. There were some developments lately in what's concerning sanctions against settlers that everybody is happy about it. I have to remind everybody that not only those who are convicted, which are very few, of committing criminal acts against or violence against Palestinians should be sanctions. Once the world remembered that settlements by itself, it's a war crime. And we have to remind everybody that settlements are war crimes, not only those who are acting. By being a settlement, you are acting violently. And you have to remember, now the Israeli government decided to build more settlements during this war. Even there are voices inside Israel saying, instead of putting the money in the settlements, put them in rebuilding the kibbutzim who were attacked on the 7th of October. So I think there is a lot more to be done. I'm fascinated by the public movement, solidarity movement, anti-war movement in many places in Europe and in the world. And the people understand very clearly that the case that the world wanted to bury is coming alive again, the Palestinian case. And I see the young people who are demonstrating all over the world, and I feel that this is the only hope we are seeing. Please continue to do that, first of all. Second, use all your political power to put pressure on your government to act in order to create a situation where this war is stopping, freeing the hostages. And I'm saying that freeing the hostages and having an agreement on that, it's an essential issue. Also because it's a human issue and it's our values not to damage civilians, but it's also because I'm telling you the general public in Israel will not be able to hear anything about political solution or stopping the war before the hostages are free. Freeing the hostages is freeing the Israeli consensus from this hegemony of war. And that will maybe bring some hope that they are able to speak about. Demand recognizing the Palestinian states. It's very crucial. It's very important, and I would thank you for continuing giving us the opportunity to bring a different voice and a different perception from Israel, from inside Israel.
Thank you very much, Aida. I have another question that was sent to me in private, I must say. It's also very Israel particular. How is the people would like to hear about your parliamentary work in an environment where real terrorists like Smurchit, or I cannot pronounce it, I'm sorry, Ben Gvir, are senior ministers, and where you, as the Democratic Party, being part of the Knesset, are also attacked by them with, with accusations of terrorism. How do you deal with it, with this situation? That's a question. And then I see in the Q&A box, there are two more questions. Since the 7th of October, anti-Muslim, anti-Arab racism rose again in Europe. I would say, by the way, never left, but it's again very evident. Often women are instrumentalized and victims to paint Arab men as the enemy. Even feminists and left-wing politicians feed into this narrative. How do you solve this problem in Israel, or do you have this problem in Israel? And how can we as feminists stop this narrative? And then there is another question I'll set you later. We have another 15 minutes to go, by the way. So everyone in the audience, you have about 3 minutes to post more questions, and then I'm going to stop. So the question was
how
to
do
make it
I?
more
Yes,
particular.
yes. How do I?
There are these narratives always, yes?
Believe me, I don't know how do I survive this situation. I should tell you one thing, Yani. One day, my daughter, since the beginning of the war, because of all the threats that I'm receiving and the way even the media has reported and incited against me personally and my colleagues, are very worried. And I also, the security in the parliament told us that we should be careful with our, movements, and to try to be careful. I'm very careful I work in Jerusalem, but I don't go anywhere in Jerusalem except the Knesset, because any fanatic can meet me anywhere, and I feel sometimes embarrassed to speak about this, comparing to the situation in Gaza. This is nothing. We are safe. We have our homes. We have water and food, and we can take care of our children. There is nothing to complain at this moment when we compare ourselves to our people in Gaza. It's really nothing. We will face those horrible ministers, fascists, and this is what we are supposed to do, and we will continue to confront them, and whatever happens, happens. About Arab men who are so horrible, they are violent to their women, they oppress their women, they kill their women. Does that remind you anything about also men who are living in Europe? Does that happen with the white, civilized democratic men. We are feminists. We do not divide the word to men and women. The man is not my enemy. Some men are my allies in my struggles, and there are women like some of the ministers in my country who are settlers, who have their guns with them, going around and talking in the name of women. So the world is not divided, men and women. And whoever think that, I usually, they used to tell me when I was, before I became even an MK, they used to tell me that, oh yeah, it's femicide in your society and violence against women is a cultural issue. And I usually used to say, yeah, that's true. It's a cultural issue. It's a culture of patriarchy. And you relate to the same culture, whoever you are, in the United States or in Europe or in any place. As long as this patriarchal culture is still existing, mixed with the oppression and ethnic racism, we will continue to think in such a way. I'm proud of many of my people who were my partners in the struggle against the oppression of women. And I'm ashamed of all the Europeans who are looking of what is happening to the Palestinian women today and keep silent and legitimize it. The world is not divided by men and women.
Thank you, Aida. We got another question in the, I'm sorry, I'm also startled by everything you say. I'm sorry if I become emotional.
That's okay, I'm emotional too. That means we are human, Katrina.
Yes. So let's say we have another two questions in the Q&A box. One, I think you answered already. I'm going to leave it for the end. The one before is, are there connection to organizations, to women organization in other Arab countries? This is a question that was posted in the chat. And then the second question, I think you answered that already quite clearly. Can you say how community or parts of it you have contact to think about freeing the hostages? But I think you've answered that already. But if you want to go for both questions, please take the time.
And in the everyday, in the normal life before the war and during now, yes, I have contacts with the Arab feminist groups in the whole Arab countries, actually, especially because of my work before the Knesset. Even now in the Knesset, it's making it more difficult for me to and for them to have the same level of relations that I had before I got to the Knesset. Some of people in the Arab world have a difficulty of having contacts with members of Knesset, but they know who I am and they know me very well in the past. We worked together and we had a lot of struggles together. As to the what is at least the Palestinians who are inside Israel, all of us wants the hostages to be freed and to have an agreement and to free them. And I wish that this also will bring, when we say, there's a slogan that the families, hostages families started, and I use it also, free all for all. And I wish that will happen, free all for all, because also there are political prisoners and there are Palestinians And I wish that this agreement will happen very soon.
Thank you very much, Aida. Thank you again for your time today. Mary came with an, she's thanking you also.
Thank you.
So I think that everybody listening to us today learned from you, and I personally am amazed by your courage. I'm in awe, and I hope we can welcome you in Europe soon, at least for some days, and learn more from you. Before we close today's webinars, I would like to make a little bit of advertisement for an upcoming event of OneState Embassy that will take also place in Zoom next Monday. It is also part of the events they planned around the International Women's Day or the International Women's Struggle Day. It's a webinar with Hannah Barak, a dedicated member of the Checkpoint Watch, an Israeli women's human rights organization that monitors checkpoints and the occupied West Bank. So those of you that enjoy... Don't miss that, exactly.
Don't miss that.
It's coming up in 2 days. If you look in the chat, perhaps Inbal and Athir can help out and send once again the social media of OneState Embassy in the chat. As I said in the beginning, we recorded this webinar, so we will soon post it online. And Aida, I hope this was the first time I saw you, but definitely not the last. And I hope it will be under better conditions soon. Much power to you, comrade.
Thank you. Thank you, comrade. Thank you. Good evening for all of you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And
bye-bye, everyone.
Continue putting pressure on your government.
We will. We will.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Aida. Thank you, Shanabd. Bye.